Today I have with me Linda Davis from Splendor Productions, Wendy Fama from IugoWorld, Ashley Wright from Gypsy Gameschooler, and Deborah Shepard from Light Up Literature Curriculum. Thanks, guys, for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to discussing all of these really great tips and really getting into addressing any concerns people have with child-led learning and how to be able to incorporate that in their homeschool, where they can be able to incorporate that and what ways it would be helpful for them. So to start, if everyone can go ahead and share in the comments if you're joining us live and where you're joining us from. And then everyone, if you can go ahead and share where you're joining us from. Jasmine, where are we at today?
We are, both Neely and I are in Fredonia, Arizona currently because we are traveling around. So we may be in another place next week, maybe same place. It just, it's just the adventure.
And
What
Linda,
about you?
where are you joining us?
I'm joining from Frisco, Texas. It's just north of Dallas.
What about you, Wendy?
I'm joining from the not so sunny California, from the San Fernando Valley. Thank you for having me today.
It's a pleasure.
And
It looks
Ashley?
like we have...
I'm joining from Arizona as well.
Hi, Carmen. This is Carmen Smith from the Magic Art of Homeschool. She's also joining us for this live roundtable.
Welcome in.
Hi, thank you. I'm coming from Australia, so thanks for having me.
Oh,
Wow.
Nice.
And I am Deborah from Light Up Literature Curriculum, and I am here from Sweet Home, Alabama.
So I want to ask each of you, what does child-led learning mean to you?
Let's start at the top with Linda.
Okay, I've been teaching for over 25 years, but in elementary music, so I'm kind of very pigeoned into that subject. And so when I'm teaching, I have to give the kids the basics. And then once they have that, then we can go on to something maybe, down another path where maybe they really enjoyed playing the instruments, and we maybe we made a story around it, and they come up with oh well, let's do this. I've done that with listening, where they're dancing to a piece of music and there's a little story behind it, and then I let the children decide how they want the story to look like, and what kind of actions or movements should be done with it. And we might end up spending more time on something that I hadn't planned to spend that much on, but they were interested, and why not go with it? And I learn a lot from them when they do that.
So, Wendy, what does child-led learning mean to you?
My background is also in education. I was an international administrator for an IB school. And then I homeschooled my children. So I have these two perspectives. And when I think about child-led learning, there's a quote from John Dewey that comes to mind, and it pretty much sums it up for me. It's education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself. So basically, it's teaching our kids the skills and the strategies that they need to acquire the information that they need to fill a gap, a project, an inquiry. And once they have that knowledge and skills, to use it and transform it into solving problems. So it's really giving them the lead and making them accountable for the management of their learning, to be independent thinkers, to take risks. And I think that, there's a lot of misconception about what child-led learning is. A lot of parents think, oh, it's just to let them, explore what they want to explore, do things how they want to do. And absolutely, that's a component of it. But I think, as we'll find out with our amazing panelists here today, there's so much more to it. But I think the essence is basically that. It's just giving our children the freedom to to go towards towards what really calls them. And they do need a lot of guidance to get there, but I love that quote from Dewey. And I think that applies to us just throughout our lives for our children. And I think it's something that we all experience day to day as adults.
So, Ashley, share with me what child-led learning means to you.
Yeah, childhood learning to me means following the child's needs. So often that correlates with their interests, but you might have a child that really needs a lot more structure. And a lot of people think that, oh, well, childhood learning or unschooling means you don't have any structure at all. Well, no, it means that you work with the child to fulfill their needs. So they might have more structure, or they might really enjoy and thrive with a certain curriculum, and that's okay. But it's really honing in on their needs and what works for them.
And Deborah, can you share what that means to you?
So to me, child-led learning really means giving students, your kiddos, the choice to direct the path that they want to begin their learning system. They're going to have to cover the topics that you define as the parent, the homeschool teacher, but giving them the opportunity to take ownership in the learning process so that they are actually focused on what they want to do first, or if they want to start at something that they like the least so that they end with something they enjoy, giving them that option, especially as they get older, or if they are very strong-willed students and they want to have that sense of control. This is a safe way to give them control, let them take ownership, and help them develop the skills they need as an adult as well.
And Carmen, can you share what it means to you?
Yeah, we've had some really great answers already. But what I would add is that to me, it's about really understanding your child, knowing them really well, knowing, like Ashley said, their needs, not just their interests. And it's ongoing. It's observing, it's monitoring. It's not just ticking boxes, and it's not just letting go and doing nothing. It's all about the relationship that you have with your child as they're learning and working with them.
That is super cool. You all have such good input on all of these different opinions and from a wide variety. It's really amazing to see all the different perspectives that really paint a full picture on from what a lot of different people need and what a lot of different people are looking for in terms of teaching their children. And the next question that we have would be, what are the benefits of child-led learning? Because there's a lot of different ways to teach with child-led learning. And what, in your opinion, are some of the main benefits of using that method to be able to teach your children? And we will start at the top again with Linda.
I think the benefits is that the child is interested in it. That's everything. I mean, or I should say that's half the battle, is if they are even interested in what they're doing. So if they're, going the way they, what is this? What are we learning here? Oh, look what I can do with this. Then it's easy to just, oh, well, like with writing a song, oh, you need a long note. Maybe they haven't learned that yet. Oh, here's a note you can show to show that long sound that you want. And then they're like, oh yeah, because I need it for my song, or whatever. And or they want to play an instrument and like they want to, but they want a different sound, and like, let's try different mallets. Maybe they'll give you the sound you want. Or I mean, they just go and go, and like I said, I think half the battle is them being interested, because I've been substitute teaching this fall, and my biggest frustrations are with kids that have no interest in doing anything, and they just want to do what they want. And that's like, it's hard to teach when somebody doesn't want to learn. So that's why I think it's great.
That's really cool. What about you, Wendy? What do you think the
Well,
benefits are?
I think one of the greatest benefits definitely is it encourages the student to be responsible and to manage their learning. So that kind of allows them to know, feel when they've learned something, and they feel a sense of accomplishment because they were able to learn it, not necessarily on their own, but they were taking the lead. So it's a little bit more significant because when a learner writes down a specific goal and is able to achieve that, that reward is so much more increased as opposed to it's more intrinsic than having a parent or someone say, okay, this is your learning goal for the day. So it does create an intrinsic motivation, and the students, I think that's when they mostly feel that they are able to do it. There's sometimes the lessons can be overwhelming, the objectives. So having them find their own way, how can I break this down? It's authentic, it's organic, and that's something that carries through, grade after grade and through their learning years.
That's a really good point. That's a really cool opinion. What about you, Ashley? What do you think some of the benefits are of child-led learning?
Well, Deborah was talking about strong-willed kids, and that would be my children. They're going to learn what they want to learn. It doesn't matter what I teach them. They're going to only learn what they're interested in. So I can either waste all of our time by insisting on teaching something they have no interest in, or I can embrace their interests and support them, and we can actually learn a lot from each other.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think that's a great way to kind of look at it for both you and the children. I think that's kind of the debate, this essential of child-led learning is kind of for both people. What about you, Deborah? What do you think the benefits are of child-led learning?
So I think there's so many benefits, but I would say my top three are the student. Like I'd already mentioned, definitely the independence and having control, having a sense of control, but also it gives them a way to identify, self-assess also what they are good at and areas where they need more support or that they're just more interested in. So they get to have more engagement in their path, and it helps them really start self-assessing where they're at. Even if they don't like something, when they feel like they have that control and like they're helping in the teaching process of it, they want to make sure that they're getting it. And I love seeing that transformation from passive learning to active learning and taking ownership. I think it's just the best thing, especially for like kiddos that I work with, kiddos like me, my daughter, we're ADHD family. And so we're like, a whole lot of wow.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely agree with that. Being able to kind of let the child be able to participate in their own schooling and give them more of an active role, and they can feel more in control. I think that's a really good point. Well, and then we have Carmen. What do you think the benefits are of child-led learning?
Again, we've just had some really great benefits, about engaging the learners and intrinsic motivation and the direction that it gives our kids. And what I'd love to add to that is this idea that we are nurturing and raising adults at the end of the day. That's our end journey. And so when we pause for a moment, take a breath, and realize that this job that we're doing lasts for a lifetime, then we can really see how the work that we do today and the learning that we help our children engage in sets them up for success in the future. It's not just about ticking a box to say, I finished the textbook, or looking at educational outcomes from institutions and saying, yes, we met what grade 3 needed us to do. It's about looking at where your child's headed and just continually refining and nurturing that so that, they end up being in the best place that they can be.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that. I really do agree with that.
I'm really enjoying this because everyone has such a unique perspective, and I think we're really getting a well-rounded idea of how you can be able to see the benefits of incorporating and giving your child a chance to be able to give some input. We actually had an article in the Homeschool Quest magazine about the cost-saving magic of child-led learning by Nathan Dost from the Flash Library. And some of the benefits that he mentioned is that when you are following your kids' interests, you're going to be able to prevent wasted spending. So if you are finding some math that they are interested in, if you're finding a unit study that they have an interest in, like for example, birds or dinosaurs, being able to find something that sparks their interest is going to make it so that they're much more likely to follow through on the curriculum. And he has some great tips on how to be able to kind of discover your kids' interests and where they're at. So, what are their existing passions? What are some age appropriate topics? And emphasizing engagement in the beginning over doing it necessarily the correct way or getting all the answers right is focusing on finding things that the kids really engage with, and that will allow you to be able to keep their interest long enough to actually teach them the correct way to be able to do the math curriculum or learn the history facts. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a link to that article if you guys are interested in reading more about that. There's a bunch of really great articles in the Homeschool Quest magazine. This last issue was packed full of affordable homeschooling tips, and it was a ton of fun to put together. I really appreciated everyone who contributed. The freebie guide was jam-packed with really great stuff, so I was really impressed with all of the different resources that people have available, especially as the holiday seasons are coming around. So I do have to ask, what is the parent's role in child-led learning? What do you feel is your job when it comes to child-led learning?
You want to start with me again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I have to admit that I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, but they're all grown now and married, and I'm a grandma. But I mean, at home, I tried to, okay, so I'm a music teacher. I did force them to take piano lessons. And I did really well with my boys, not so well with my girls. And then they could stop taking piano if they changed to a different instrument. So I was pretty hardcore on there. But the last child, she got away with hardly doing anything, but she ended up being a singer. So I guess her interest was in singing, and I just, you know how it is with children in life. And anyways, I think it's so important. So when I see children in the school, I see a lot of things that I don't like. And if I were having if my children were young now, I'd be like, I don't think I would want my child at this school, because there'll be 1 or 2 or 3 kids in the classroom that I would not want them to be around. And it's sad. It's very sad. But regardless whether you're homeschooling or you have a child in a school, you've got to listen to them and see what, not just their interests, but like their emotional state and everything. Just be in tune to your child. And I know when I had 4 children that were small, it's very hard to be in tune with every single one of them all the time. But, just take the time to be present in their life and listen to them is something. I mean, things can happen, good or bad, inside or outside of a public school, at home, or anywhere, relatives or whatever, and just be in tune. And it's like, oh, you did something really fun, and celebrate with that, or celebrate their newfound knowledge. And then just be aware that of things that might be hard for them, and just be there for your child. I think just listen to them. That's my take on that.
So being an active listener. I like that. So what would you say, Wendy, is the parent's role in child-led learning?
I think principally it would be as a researcher, definitely as a researcher and planner, so that we can always stay one step ahead of them, which is kind of difficult considering because they may start on one path and go off on another path, and we really need to catch them and make sure we're ready for that. Otherwise, the paths will get crossed, and objectives will not be met. And again, these are not necessarily our objectives, but the child's objectives. So I think it's important that we're constantly, our knowledge is updated, our skills as well. And it's advancing rapidly. You know, there's always new skills and new programs and whatnot. And the kids are sometimes, well, it depends on how much screen time they have, but a lot of times when you have some of these older learners, you know, they're always a step ahead of us as far as that goes. So it's important that, you know, we're current on one hand, and that our research of you know, the skills that the kids need to acquire, the skill sets that, you know, the workforce, colleges, you know, and not necessarily for that office job. Again, we have musicians, we have athletes, we have, you know, entrepreneurs, and we have doctors, and we have, you know, teachers. We're preparing them, and so we need to know what is going to be expected of them. You know, at home we have definitely a vision of what we want our family, our children to achieve, and that is, you know, varies extremely depending on the family culture of each, you know, of each homeschool. But when they go out into the real world, this is where, you know, there's that divider between home and, you know, and where they're going to continue their development and eventually get into, you know, that professional role. So we do need to be current. Again, we definitely need to give them resources because they will have the wonderful ideas, and, you know, they'll be inspired, hopefully, and motivated, and there'll be times when they're frustrated, and we need resources for that as well. So we have to provide them the resources so that they can continue on the path, you know, that there's in a project or whatever. And we also need to have those resources when they're stuck. And then my other two favorite roles are giving them feedback, because some of our kids, we are the main source of feedback for them. And then also when we have gifted and talented learners, we want to be that devil's advocate also. So these are roles that for me is so much fun. And sometimes the feedback is, you know, it's absolutely what they need to redo or, you know, think through a little bit more. But I would definitely say with those four principal roles.
I love that. I think that's great. So you're talking about being a really good researcher, providing structure, and being that person that can kind of give them that feedback, be that source of truth for them so that they can be able to, they're like, I know mom's going to tell me the truth on whether or not I look good in this hat or
Right.
whether or not my essay makes sense. And so being that source of truth and that trusted person that can give them that feedback. I totally agree. I think that that's a really important role to have.
And I just wanted to add with that, since you mentioned it just really quickly, being that trusted feedback means that one of the things I love to do with my children, and I do it to this day, and they do it as well, is they don't believe me, don't believe what I say, because everything that I am telling you comes from a perspective of how I was brought up, you know, and there's these generational gaps. So it's really important that, yes, we can accept, we don't always affirm what our kids say, but we can definitely accept it and then and let them know, okay, I am not the sole source, you know, and I mean, I'm obviously in our environment, we do serve as like the principal and the teacher, but get two or three other sources and then, you know, challenge that a little bit, and that's where that truth will lie for them. So it's kind of a scary line to cross with our children, but I think that is what child-led learning is, that they are absolutely free in their learning, and that we are brave enough as parents to allow them to do that.
So, Ashley, what do you feel is the parent's role in child-led learning?
Sort of similar to what I was hearing, part of what Wendy was saying was that I don't consider myself to be my kid's teacher. I'm a facilitator. So it's my job to connect my kids to resources, whether that means I take them to the library so they can get library books, or I find library books that I think they're going to enjoy, or I connect them with another community member for a class, or find a class on OutSchool that they're going to enjoy. Whatever it is, I connect them to resources. I don't necessarily teach them myself because honestly, my kids are so completely different from me. We have almost nothing in common. My daughter sometimes pretends to be mini me, but her interests are actually wildly different than mine. So I'm not a good actual resource or teacher for them, but I can go and find good resources and teachers for them.
So, Deborah, what would you say is the parent's role in child-led learning?
So, great answers so far. Everyone's done awesome. The only thing I would say that we definitely, as parents, our role is absolutely evaluating data. Because even though we're homeschooling, we still have to have data without, everyone thinks data sounds so ugly, but really it just shows, this is how I tell all my kiddos that I teach. I don't care how you do on the diagnostic, because all it does is show me what you already know so we can focus on the things you need more support with so I don't bore you. And when you put it in that, make it a safe environment to be able to fail, make mistakes, not be successful on some things, and allow for that reteach, that's where our parent role or our teacher role is so important and vital. We want to give them the parameters for, you know, their activities, but we still have to bring it back and make sure that we are meeting objectives. We are learning and advancing, moving the needle forward. It doesn't mean we have to jump leaps and bounds, but progress is progress. And kiddos love to see and be able to track progress. And they internally know whether whether they understand something or not. And so if we don't show them, okay, you did rock star on this but this little part here, we got to work on just a little more. And then give them that opportunity to say, well, what do you think you need the most help with? Then we're re-engaging them, giving them feedback and giving them ideas and control. And then at the end of the day, we just have to guide them. It gives us that opportunity to guide, and while they still get to have control and personalize their learning, which is what we all want, even as adults.
So, Carmen, I'd love to hear your perspective on what the parent's role is.
Yeah, well, obviously, the parent's role is about relationship, it's about partnership and working with the children. But what I would add is that it changes a little as the child ages. So when they're younger, obviously the parent needs to drive a little bit more because a very young child has less ability to see the bigger picture and to be able to articulate their needs and interests. And so it takes a lot of observation and an outside analysis and monitoring. But as the child grows, it really evolves into more of a mentorship style relationship where you're open to asking and listening to your child and to become a safe space for them so that they know that you're always coming from a place of love and acceptance with no judgment about their performance. There's no shame layered around their development, that you're always on their side, but you become like a container to funnel and to guide their learning and development so that you can give. I mean, us parents, we've been on the planet a little longer than our children, so we've got a little bit more experience and knowledge, and we can use that to help hold space for them to grow.
I love that, the concept of providing that structure in the beginning and then transitioning more to a mentor role. I think that that's a really important aspect of child-led learning.
I think all of you had such amazing, just amazing perspectives, and just, again, it's just so cool to see from all the different perspectives and how it intertwines with each other and how it can just be so helpful just to have another perspective. A lot of homeschool parents, they're homeschooling you. In a sense, they feel like they're in the trenches or like they're digging that. They're going and they kind of can get tunnel vision sometimes of just like, I gotta keep going. But being able to stop and hear someone else's perspective can encourage someone to be like, oh, I'm doing good. I can keep going. It's not necessarily about the numbers. It's about your child learning. It's not about it. It's like it is and it isn't about the data. It's important to have the data so that you can know how your child needs to learn. But it's also important to know that like what some of you other people were saying here, is that it depending on where the child is going and where they want to go and how they want to end up and what kind of adult that they're becoming, to be able to help nurture and help them create their own life as an adult, starting when they're a child. And I think that that's really important, especially for me. Growing up, I always loved art and I always loved drawing. And so instead of saying, oh no, you have to learn all this, all this base stuff, my mom was like, okay, if if you learn math, then I will let you have an hour to learn art. And if you learn history, then you can have 2 hours to learn art. And so I was able to learn all these things and find love for math and find love for history, but then also nurture my skills in art. And now I'm a graphic designer, and that's what I do because I love doing it. And I was able to build those building blocks with my mom helping me with child-led learning when I was a kid, now being able to use those skills as an adult rather than having to start from day one when I'm ready to start my business, And I think that that's all really important. The next question that is, I feel like, is really important is, what are your tips for child-led learning? You all have different perspectives and you all have such good ideas, and what are your tips for child-led learning for parents that are trying to do this? And we'll start with Linda.
Okay, I apologize because I'm okay. Oh, she's got it right there. Thank you. Okay, so we already talked about how you had to have the basics first. You've got to know how music theory to compose a song, or you need to know the basic technique of an instrument before you can play it. My background is with ORF and Kodai methodologies, and they're totally two different styles. ORF is very structured and very teaching how to read and write music, but there's others, it's all based on singing. And ORF is very improvisation, creation, and a lot of instrument focus. And I've taught in two different districts, one in Las Vegas that was big on ORF. And that was great, but I found that a lot of kids didn't know really how to read music, but they could, they knew rhythms really well. In fact, my grandchildren live in Las Vegas. I used to live there. And so when I tried to have them watch my videos, they could do the rhythm great, but they were so lost when it came to melodies. And then the Kodai, sometimes they get a little bit too structured and they need to get this creativity. So I think when you're picking out curriculum and stuff, just you got to, sometimes it's mixing them out. And I just wanted to bring up that back when I lived in Las Vegas, I had a special ed class for maybe 6 weeks. And it was my most fun class because they would come to me and we would just figure out right then I just let the kids tell me what they were doing. I mean, it's not that I didn't have a plan, but it could be so loose, and like one day was the principal's birthday, so I made sure they knew how to sing happy birthday, and we went over to the principal and sang to her, and it was so much fun and free teaching them. But then 6 weeks in, somebody said, oh no, they have to be integrated with the regular kids. So there were like 13 of them shoved into a class of 31 fourth graders, and they got lost. So that was really, really sad. And then real quickly, basic foundation, explore within the knowledge they have. So if they know how to do a 2-note song with so and me, that's how I start out, then they could make up songs with that. They're not going to make up a big symphony, but just use what they know and go from there. They want to play instruments, have them start with unpitched instruments like maracas or shakers or something. And then if you get to a barred instrument, there's certain notes you can pull off that anything they play is going to be great until they know more about scales and things like that. And the last thing I'd like to say, if they like to perform, give them, then I say if, because some kids don't, but if they do, give them opportunities. It might be just an impromptu one where you're just watching them do make up a song right there, or it might be informal when somebody's over. It's like, hey, my child has made up this thing. You want to hear it? Or you can make it even a little more formal and maybe as a part of a gathering. Oh, okay, well, we're going to, take a little time here to, have a little bigger audience depending on who's there. So, and I just, so those are just my tips right there.
So I want
Those
to
are some
hear a
really
little
good
bit
tips.
about how that ties in with what you do with Music Duo.
Okay, so I made all these videos for my virtual kids in public school, and it was just for them. I just put them on YouTube, and then one day I decided to start showing them to my in-person classes. And oh my gosh, that made such a big difference. First of all, I have text for every song, so that helps with reading. I could put visuals up for my Venezuelan kids that came to us with no English, and but even my English speakers, nothing got skipped because I had everything on video. So I have these courses, and when I'm teaching the basics, because a lot of parents don't have that musical foundation to know how to teach or when to teach concepts, I do that. But then I'll say, okay, take this song that you learned and create up your own verses, or do your the instrument part, improvise, use like Peter, Peter, Pumpkin Eater, use the rhythm of that chant and put it on any notes you want, and see how that sounds. And then we have games. Yesterday I was on a Zoom with a couple of our Music Duo students, and I was going to do the game that was on the courses where it's just from Google Drive, and it's Black Snake is a song, and I have a snake hidden on each different places on each one. And I thought we were going to do that with them, and no, one of the girls ran and got a pipe cleaner and twisted it up and made a little bulky head on there, and then we played it with and be loud and soft depending on like a hot and cold game. And it's just right there. It's like, oh, I thought I was gonna do something else, but these girls had a better idea. And anyway, so I can't, obviously with videos I can't just let the child, I'm not there to help them, but that's why we called it Music Duo. It's you, the parent slash teacher, and me together helping your child. But when your child wants to do something else with a lesson, that's all you. Let them go for it, and you're there to supervise. So that's that's our Music Duo courses.
That's really cool. I think that is something that a lot of people would benefit from. And also, a lot of people need they need to have a team member to help them to be able to teach their kids. And that's kind of what you're doing is you're like, hey, I'm on your team.
Yeah,
Let's do it together, because it can be scary to do it on their own, especially when they don't have the experience that you have.
right.
That is really awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I think that takes us to Wendy. What is your tip for child-led learning?
It's an unusual tip, but thinking about homeschool parents, I get a lot of parents that say, and you've all heard this, I'm not a teacher, I don't know how to teach, how am I going to do this? So I think from that respect, child-led learning is amazing. The experience, especially when parents learn with their kids. I think that is probably my tip. Don't be afraid to learn with them. Just from experience, I know a lot of teachers that I've worked with, sometimes there's a topic or a question that's asked, and they say, I was asked this question and I didn't know the answer. And that happens in the classroom, that happens to us at home. Don't be afraid of it, and say, okay, let's learn this together. And then your child starts to trust you as well. You start to break down that barrier, and this is more for the older kids that can kind of say, like, why don't you know this? Usually the younger ones, well, we usually know what we're teaching them, but the older ones, it does inspire confidence, and at the same time, if there's a topic that they want to run away with, and say, okay, I'd like to research this, or I'd like to do inquiry about this, and we don't know about it. We can establish together, okay, what is learning going to look like for us? Learning for me looks like this. I'm going to produce this, maybe it's a video, a presentation, or when I'm able to answer these questions, that's what it looks like for me. So what does learning look like for you? And that's when the child will, look at the outcome kind of to set the beginning and say, okay, I want it to look like this, and this is how I will show my learning. So learning with your children brings on an entire new level of, trust and experience that really enriches the process. So my tip, even though it may sound unusual, I think would be, don't be afraid to learn with your child.
That is, I really agree with that. I think that that's such a good point. To kind of, and it helps dispel some of the most common fears, I think, with homeschooling of like, well, what if I don't know these things? It's like, well, then you can learn, and so can your kid, and then you both get benefits. And you know, I think that that's such a neat thing to be able to, and it's such an important thing to keep in mind and to know. Um, and I'd like you to tell us a bit about how you kind of help with this and how you incorporate child-led learning into IugoWorld, which is your homeschool consulting.
Sure. So IugoWorld is an all-in-one homeschool app. And it's funny because it was actually designed for new homeschoolers as well as seasoned homeschoolers, precisely with this in mind, just because as homeschool parents, each family, each child has different needs. And usually we're looking at so many different resources, and we're subscribing to this service and that service, and, all of a sudden, we've just got these amazing bills of resources that we don't necessarily always use. So the idea with IugoWorld is that parents can find everything that they need in one simple app. And they can download it on their phone. And we do have curriculum, we have consultations, we have language courses, just so many different things. It's all academic based with an international education perspective, although there are things that tie in with the different standards, like Texas, for example, has the TEKS, and other states have the Common Core, and then, so we do cover quite a bit of, the needs of the different states. But the idea is precisely that, to give the parent the freedom, at the drop of a hat to say, oh, I need this. And instead of going on and just researching page after page, they can type in a question to one of our consultants, and get that immediate response and resource that they need for their child, so that we can stay focused. Parents can stay focused on the task at hand, as opposed to be inundated with so many resources.
That's so cool. I think that also it's like it can be so helpful for people that are busy, because a lot of homeschool moms, they have jobs and their husband has jobs, and so they might not have time to research everything and to be able, and they're like, okay, I might want to do this curriculum, but I don't know if it's good or not. I haven't researched it. I don't know what curriculum to choose. And so they can go to you and be like, which one is better, and you can tell them, oh, we've researched this, and help them out. And that can be just so helpful for people that are just so busy, and they genuinely don't have the time to do everything on their own, and they need that support group, and you can be that support group for them. I think
Yes,
that's really neat.
and the shared parents experience with all our members as well. So, yes,
Yeah,
you.
that's super cool. Well, that brings us to Ashley. What is your tip for child-led learning?
Yeah, so a lot of times when I talk about unschooling, instantly somebody goes, well, what about learning gaps? What if your kid doesn't learn everything? And I always tell them they're not going to. It's not possible to learn everything there is to know. That's why we specialize. And so I always look back and think about my own education in the public school system and how much I didn't learn. I legitimately thought that the Galapagos Islands were off the coast of Africa until I looked at a globe with my kids when they were like toddlers or preschoolers and went, oh, it's off South America. And I was a zoology major. Evolution was my jam. Like, that was a huge gap that I had. And I have 2 college degrees. Like, we all have gaps. So I just remember that, okay, it's okay if they have gaps as long as they know how to fill them.
That is such a good point. I think that that's something that a lot of people, they get stressed about that, of like, they feel like they have to teach their kid every single thing there is to know, and it's like one of those things to where it focus on what's important, and then the rest will kind of, you can fill it out as you go. You have a lot of years. You don't stop homeschooling once you reach 18. You can learn what you need to know later on, and as long as you learn the most important things, then that you can use that to be able to learn the other little things later on. And I think that that's something that is really interesting. And tell me how that you incorporate that into your Gypsy game schooling, and how you make it fun for the kids so that they want to learn.
So Gypsy Gameschooler is my blog. I do reviews of board, card, and dice games. And so we play all sorts of different games. A lot of games are very educational. And so my kids learn a lot from games, but we also learn a lot outside of games. But as far as like gaps go, I mean, you're not going to learn everything from games, right? You've got basic math, you've got spelling and all sorts of things, but you're not going to learn how to write an essay from a game. But you can, learn about, like I said, spelling and other things, and then you fill in the gaps as you go.
Yeah, learn the fundamentals in a way that's fun for them, and then they can use those skills that they learned and apply that as they learn to more advanced topics.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really cool. What about you, Deborah? What is your tip for child-led learning?
So I work, my tip would be more ELA based. When it comes to teaching ELA skills, whether it's reading, writing, or grammar, I would say if a student, especially for students who don't enjoy reading, let them choose a book. Create all the materials you need from a book that they want. If they don't like reading at all, pick a book that has a movie component. That way, the reward is we have a movie party after the book. You build in all the things you need from something that they're interested in, and that gives them a choice, so they're getting to choose. And you can do book trailers and movie trailers to help them select an idea, and it makes it more interesting for them, and they get that choice again, but it's a structured choice, which is very helpful.
I think that's such a good thing to be able to keep in mind, is being able to encourage your kids to do things that might be more difficult for them, or they might not want to do, with incentives, basically, with, to be able to get them excited about it, and to be able to get them to genuinely want to do it because they get a reward. And I think that's such a good perspective. And how do you incorporate that kind of those concepts into your light up literature ELA?
So what I do is I love taking popular books and breaking them down, and we have interactive games where we dissect the main skills, our common core standards like main idea, theme, all of that, but we do it where we're actually having fun doing it, but we're still taking care of it, incorporating guided reading. So especially if your kiddo was like me when I was a kid, who didn't love reading, hated it, so that's why it's so weird that this is what I do. But chunking it up, making it smaller sections, having interactive games, having an interactive classroom. So a lot of us use Zoom. I use a different program. It's called Koala Go, and I'm a big proponent of that because they get to be interactive on the same screen with you, and you can create entire worlds that match the book. So it's fun, but it's still educational. And so to me, that's super important. And that's how I incorporate grammar, writing, everything from each chapter in whatever book or the short story that we're reading. And then you can do research projects and just build so much on that. And so that's what I love to do. And that's what we do.
I think that's really cool. I think that that's really amazing. I think that, it's important to encourage kids to read, especially because it's something that is so important and useful in your daily life, even just as an adult, just being able to understand and being able to translate what you're reading into something that makes sense for you. Because everyone thinks different ways and everyone has different ways of thinking things. So having that as you're a kid, being able to learn how to read and how to translate it and how to learn using that, I think is something that is so very important because almost, with the internet and everything nowadays, a lot of everything is written and a lot of everything is online and text-based. And so being able to learn with something that's fun, but also learning something that's so very useful. I think that's just a cool way to be able to teach your kids.
Thank you.
So what about you, Carmen? What is your tip for child-led learning?
Well, I would encourage families, no matter what the context is or the subject that they're tackling, to have a system for recording and for planning and for structuring their thoughts and their observations. And this is a really complicated topic because everybody's brains work differently. And so the way that a system will work for you and your family will be different in every situation as well. Like a type A personality will be all over the plans and the records and the boxes, but a more creative brain might have a little difficulty doing that. And yet there's a huge benefit from being able to structure your homeschool in some capacity. And so I think that being honest about what works for you and your family, and then creating a way of working together to, whether it's putting things on paper, whether it's collecting photographs, or whatever method of structuring your homeschool works for you, having a kind of a basis so that you can keep coming back to it. Otherwise, I mean, we could follow tangents with our children all day long, but if we don't sort of weave that together into a little bit of a story of our homeschool, we haven't got a whole lot to work with.
I think that that is so very important to keep in mind. I think that that is such a good point. Having structure is very important. Being able to just, as a kid, even just with your schedule, having a consistent schedule where you have a certain time of the day, you do certain things, it can be really helpful, especially for kids that struggle with feeling like overwhelmed or feeling like there's so many things that they have to do. Having a structure, they're like, okay, I know this is the time to do this, I know that I go here, I know that I pull out this resource and this is what I do, and that kind of thing. I think that that can be really important. How do you incorporate that kind of structure and help homeschooling families to have that structure with your Magic Art of Homeschool consulting?
Well, thanks for asking. I help families to develop that structure in the way that works for them. So I have online courses to teach them how they might approach planning, how they might approach project planning, how they might approach record keeping and registration sort of paperwork, and putting it all together in a way that reflects their family and works for their family.
That is so helpful, and I think that a lot of people definitely need that. And kind of back to what I was talking to with Wendy about how a lot of homeschooling families are so busy, and so having people that can help them, having someone that can give them that structure, and then they can be able to use that to even find more time to be able to spend with their children. And I think that that is such a neat way to be able to help homeschooling families and to be able to kind of spread the positivity and the message of homeschooling, even to be able to help these people that might not normally be able to homeschool because they don't have that structure. A lot of people are looking to have the same or a similar structure as when they did with public schooling, and they're like, how am I going to do it because I don't know how to do this? And so being able to have you be like, okay, I know how to do this, let me help you. I think that that's so important to be able to have so many people, so many amazing people here that are just willing to help and are just here, that they have you all have the knowledge, and so you're wanting to share it to be able to just help everyone that is homeschooling their kids to be able to make productive, healthy adults, because that's the goal.
Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. This has been absolutely fantastic roundtable. So much great knowledge shared today. I really appreciate you guys making time out of your schedule to share with us your tips and your perspective on this. I hope that this encourages more families to incorporate child-led learning in their homeschool. And we've talked about the benefits, the ways that you can do it, what your role is, and how you can be able, some tips for how to be able to incorporate it in your homeschool. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us live. And if you are going to watch the replay, go ahead and type in replay in the comments so that we can see any questions you have and give them an answer. We will be seeing you again in January. We're going to be going over early learning tips. So I look forward to seeing all of you over there as well. Thank you, everyone.
And don't forget to download the magazine.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.